Thanks for watching this portion of Garage Logic today on our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. And also thanks to our friends at Everest Men's Health for sponsoring this. Go to everestmenshealth.com today to see if they can help you with better energy and better health. And catch the Garage Logic podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Let's get heavy for a moment on the Garage Logic service road of life. Ooh. Well, there's something to be mined there. The Cherry being trucked to New York, for example, in lieu of the desperate attempts by the Salon to make us aware that we're ruining the earth. Mm-hmm. Life, for the most part, continues despite the climate change hysteria.
Sure.
In other words, it's entirely natural to ship a cherry somewhere to get painted. And life goes on. And the climate change derangement people are having no impact, which could be a ray of hope. They're having no impact on the reality of the self-evident truth that nothing has changed. They're hell-bent on making sure something changes, mm-hmm. and more likely than not, they'll be successful in numerous ways. But
so you're saying they're getting their news coverage, but everybody's just kind of going about their business.
I mean, nobody in the Salon will blink an eye that the cherry's getting hauled to Chicago or wherever the hell it's going, New York, to get painted. But they're the same people who will have spent the day advising you that fossil fuels are to be denigrated. Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. Now listen to this. I don't know where this puts people. Days after Biden told world leaders that his administration is committed to slowing climate change with action and not words, his Interior Department oversaw one of the largest oil and gas lease sales in American history, which pleases me immensely.
Mm-hmm. Right.
80 million acres of the Gulf of Mexico, an area twice the size of Florida, was put on the auction block Wednesday. Energy companies led by ExxonMobil placed bids on a total of only 1.7 million acres, and it's unclear how much of that will later be developed. And I purposely selected NPR as my website to print this story because, of course, they immediately turned to the environmentalists.
Right.
Because they're in denial of their own irony of realizing that life goes on. Mm-hmm. And it's a self-evident truth that you aren't going to wake up tomorrow and a magical windmill is going to provide you electricity. It's not going to happen. Environmentalists decried the lease auction. This is an administration that campaigned on dealing with climate change, said Drew Caputo, an attorney at Earth Justice, which sued to stop the sale.
Earth Justice.
Justice. That's why this lease sale is so disappointing, because how'd you get to work today, Drew, you phony?
Right.
That's why this lease sale is so disappointing, because it is the most significant action that the administration will have taken on oil gas development, and it goes in the wrong direction. The Biden administration argues that it did not have an option. Shortly after taking office, Biden announced a temporary pause on new oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters, pending a review of their impact on the worsening climate crisis. There is no climate crisis. The climate has always changed. Roughly a quarter of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions come from fossil fuel extraction from public lands. More than a dozen Republican-led states filed a lawsuit challenging that pause, saying it would cause undue harm.
Wait. Back up a second. You just read it. More than how much comes from extracting?
Roughly a quarter of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions comes from fossil fuel extractions.
Just the extracting?
Apparently.
And proof of that?
Isn't
can I see some proof?
There's nothing offered to me.
All right, please continue.
More than a dozen Republican-led states filed a lawsuit challenging the pause, saying it would cause undue harm to the energy industry and state economies reliant on fossil fuel production. Earlier this summer, a federal judge in Louisiana sided with those states, issuing a nationwide preliminary injunction. The Biden administration is appealing that decision, but agreed to resume lease sales in the interim. Additional lease sales are scheduled for Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, and other western states early next year. They can be held in contempt if they don't comply with the court order. And so I think they're looking at the litigation risk and making a judgment call, said Hillary Tompkins, an environmental attorney at Hogan Lovells, who served as solicitor of the Interior Department during the Obama administration. They're staring at the self-evident truth. Mm-hmm. We need fossil fuels, which should be celebrated and not denigrated. And it's become obvious to even Biden, who will change his mind if it suits him. Sure, he told the people in Scotland, we're not going to do any of this. And then he comes back and he opens up the biggest lease in American history. Now, it's an interesting question. Where does that put you if you're suffering from climate derangement syndrome? This was your guy. I mean, this is one of the reasons you voted for him. He's your guy, and he's committed to swallowing all this BS and drinking all the Kool-Aid that's put in front of him. But apparently, no, he's not. No, he's not. He sees the self-evident truth of the need for you to get gas in your car so you can go to work.
I love that you noticed this and ripped it. I too ripped it out of the Star Tribune, and it's an AP piece, Joe. And
is it the always available Seth Borenstein?
Matthew Brown and Janet McConaughey, AP. And it's A11 in the Star Tribune, buried. And I was reading through it because, climate change and all of that. And then I came across, midway through the piece, a couple of really interesting paragraphs. First of all, it's going to take years to develop the leases, and they could keep producing long past 2030 when scientists say the world needs to be well on its way to cutting greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, that's fine. But here's what I like, and here's what highlights what you said to start this discussion. Life goes on anyway. Here's the quote. Yet even as Biden has tried to cajole other world leaders into strengthening efforts against global warming, including at this month's UN climate talks in Scotland, he's had difficulty gaining ground on climate issues at home.
That's because they're not important to us.
Right. And here's another one, quoting a guy named Jim Crane. The thing that is really bedeviling people right now in this conflict between short-term and long-term when it comes to energy policy, said Jim, is that we still need this energy system that is basically causing climate change, even as we're fighting climate change. So at least they admit we need fossil fuels. Even though we hate fossil fuels, we need fossil fuels.
I'm confused.
The point is, where are you now? What is your position now? You're a Biden supporter, and you cheered him on with his promises made to the people in Scotland at the meeting, only to discover that, hell, the jet isn't even cooled off yet from bringing him home. And he authorized 80 million acres of the Gulf of Mexico to be sold to oil and gas leases, which I appreciate. So, see, I'm fine. Where are you? I can't ask anybody here. We're all pretty much on the same page.
Pretty
I
much,
think
yeah.
that there's a severe amount, though, of what would you call it, buyer's remorse with the current president.
Well, his approval rating now is at 36%. It keeps plummeting.
Okay. You saw that piece yesterday or the day before, yeah.
And that knucklehead vice president that he's got at his side, she's not the answer.
Did I read a piece this morning or see a headline, John? There's dissension.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to get rid of her if they think she's running in 2024. They're nuts. The Democrats are gonna have to somehow push her out of there.
What are the derangement sufferers going to say? What can they possibly say? They're all hypocrites anyway.
Of course.
They all have a car.
They go on vacation. They fly.
Yeah. What can they possibly say?
I know.
Did you guys know? Could I mention one other energy note I saw yesterday?
You sure
May,
can.
May
yeah.
I, please?
Sure can.
You talked about, you had an acquaintance who flew into North Dakota and said it was very windy.
Right.
And I talked to a family member who said for the past week it's been, 30, 40, 50 mile an hour winds. So then I see this story yesterday. Did you know that wind turbines can't work in that kind of wind? Is that irony?
Come
or what is that?
They
I mean,
have a
it's too
max?
windy for
It's
it.
too windy.
It's too windy. It puts apparently. Yeah, it puts too much force and pressure on the blades, and it can damage the blades. So they shut down. They have an automatic thing that shuts them down if the wind
Like
reaches
Like a brake?
Actually, John, on this show, it's referred to as a propeller.
propeller. Yeah, the propeller
the
stops
propeller of the
automatically
Well,
if it's too windy.
a gallon of gasoline doesn't care if it's too windy.
No.
A gallon of gasoline doesn't care if it's too cold. A gallon of gasoline doesn't care if it's raining. A gallon of gasoline doesn't care if the sun is not shining. A gallon of gasoline doesn't care if it's too warm. A gallon of gasoline doesn't care if there's a hurricane. In fact, a gallon of gasoline will get you out of harm's way in the event of a hurricane, although tornadoes and hurricanes were at their lowest ebb in ages in the year 2021.
Well, that's because of climate change.
A gallon of gasoline's pretty free spirit, huh?
And-
Really careful.
Well, a gallon of gasoline is a miracle.